Dogs Don't Tell Jokes by Louis Sachar, 10. It got worse as the week wore on. I don't like being called Goon anymore, he told Matt Hughes. What Goon? Asked Matt. Just call me Gary, not Goon. Okay, Goon, said Matt. I heard you, Goon. I won't call you Goon anymore, okay, Goon? How about Blubberhead? Asked Paul. Lard butt, suggested Ryan. He shrugged and walked away. He wasn't exactly surprised. He knew he didn't have any friends. It was just that he never quite realized before that if he didn't go up to people and tell them a joke, no one ever spoke to him. No one even said hi Goon to him in the hall. But he made a deal with his parents and he kept it. He remembered a poem from a book he'd read when he was a little kid. I meant what I said and I said what I meant, and elephant's faithful 100%. He told it to himself whenever he was feeling especially depressed, and it always managed to cheer him up a little bit. After school, alone in his room, he was happy, making up jokes. It seemed the more miserable he was at school, the funnier the jokes. It was like the jokes were building up inside him all day long, bursting to get out, like Rumpelstiltskin, that wretched soul who spun straw into gold every evening. Gary Boone spun his misery into humor. He often made up jokes in the shower. He'd stay there until all the hot water was gone, and then suddenly he'd have to quickly wash himself under the freezing spray. He never decided beforehand what his jokes would be about. He'd just start talking and out they'd pop. Wednesday was October 31st, Halloween. He might have guessed he would make up jokes about ghosts or witches, but instead, on Halloween night, he made up a Christmas joke. He thought it was his funniest joke yet, but then again, they were all hilarious. He had no doubt he would win that talent show. Either that or I'll totally flip out and turn into some weirdo or something. Just sit in a corner and pick my nose all day, he laughed. Or maybe I'll shave my head, get a machine gun, and blow away half the school. Ha ha. And as they bury the dead, the newsmen try to figure out why a young lad only 12 years old wanted to do such a horrible thing. He seemed harmless, says a classmate. He didn't have a lot of friends. He kept to himself. He didn't like baseball cards. He liked to tell jokes. I guess we should have laughed. I guess we should have laughed, repeats the newsman in a serious and I guess we should have laughed, repeats the TV newsman in a serious and ominous voice. And this is your narrator, Kent Kentley, speaking, reminding you that this is a 30-year-old book, and school shootings were not really something that happened at that time. So, well, it does not seem like a joke right now in 1991. That was something that a 7th grader could make a joke about sometimes, and people would actually laugh. But I don't think that we're laughing too hard at that in 2021. And we'll continue the story. Even Gary had to stop and wonder about himself for a moment after that one. Do you feel like an egg this morning? His mother asked him Friday morning when he came down for breakfast. He looked at her curiously. Was she testing him? Do you feel like an egg this morning? I don't know. How does an egg feel? Do you feel like an egg this morning? Just call me Humpty Dumpty. Do you feel like an egg this morning? Yes, you better not drop me. I might crack. No thanks, he said. I'll have cereal. On his way to school, he suddenly stopped right in the crosswalk in the middle of the street in front of Floyd Hicks Junior High. He looked at the 2-story building, the kids in the schoolyard, the buses in the parking lot, until he stopped telling jokes. He never realized how much he hated school. A car honked at him. He didn't move. Another car sped around him. Why did the goon cross the road, he wondered. I don't have a dog, but I've always wanted him, so I got a goldfish. His name's Rover. I've taught him to fetch a stick. You know how some people throw sticks in the water for their dogs to chase? I throw a stick out of the water for Rover to chase. Gary stepped down from the top of his chair. At first, he thought a fish named Rover was a great idea, but now he couldn't think of any more jokes. That was okay, that happened. He just had to go on to something else. Maybe a fish joke would pop into his head later. Maybe when he was sleeping. Sometimes when he woke up in the morning, he'd suddenly think of a new punchline for a joke he had started the night before. He continued walking around his room. Did I tell you about my father? He's very handy around the house, always fixing things. Yesterday he hooked up a new VCR. He also put in a garage door opener. It all works great, except every time you push the button to the remote control to change the channel, the garage door opens. Last week he fixed the toilet and installed a new light switch in the bathroom. Now if you want to flush the toilet, you have to flick the light switch. And if you want to turn on the light, you have to push the lever on the toilet. I have a sister named Sally. Everyone calls her Saloon. She's disgusting, although I guess I shouldn't say bad things about her. Gary put his hand over his heart. She's in the hospital. She needs a tongue transplant. It's because she never stops talking. She's 16 years old, and this will be her 3rd tongue. She was talking on the phone to one of her boyfriends. She was in the middle of telling him how much she loved him when her tongue flapped out of her mouth and onto the floor. I was there, sitting at the kitchen counter having a snack. It was disgusting. Not her tongue. I mean, my sister saying, "I love you, sweetheart," right there on the kitchen phone while I was trying to eat. Of course, without her tongue, it didn't sound like "I love you, sweetheart." It sounded like "I love you, we-huh." Her boyfriend probably didn't even notice. They're always talking baby talk to each other. I told you she was disgusting. Meanwhile, the tongue flapped around on the floor for a while like a fish out of water until it finally stopped and lay still. My dad came in to get a glass of milk and stepped right on it. Have you ever stepped on a tongue? No, well, it's like a banana peel except thicker and more slippery. My dad desperately tried to hold on to the quart of milk as he went flying. No, not quart of milk, half gallon. Gallon of milk. The more milk, the funnier. Meanwhile, my sister just went right on talking as she glared angrily at my father, who was lying on the floor in a pool of milk. Finally, she held the phone aside and said, "I'm trying to talk on the phone, if you don't mind," except it sounded like, "I'm trying if you I." We tried to pick up the tongue to show it to her, but it kept slipping through our fingers. Have you ever tried to pick up a tongue after it's been covered in milk? No, well, it's like soap in a bathtub. Just when you think you have it, it squishes out of your hand and goes shooting across the room. My sister finally hung up. As she walked across the kitchen floor, I thought she was going to step on it too. "Watch your tongue," said my father. She just gave him a dirty look, then bent down and picked it up. She had no problem picking it up because she has long fingernails. Then she slapped me across the face with it. She just kept hitting me over and over again. She gave me a real tongue lashing. My mother came in and said, "Hold your tongue, young lady." So now she's in the hospital waiting for a suitable donor. This time she wants a giraffe tongue. She heard those are the best for kissing. Her old tongue is on my dad's desk, stapled to his blotter. He keeps it moist and uses it for wetting stamps and envelopes. And that's the end of chapter 10.